Former Obama White House stenographer, that is an official White House position, we just learned. Mike McCormick is his name, and he's alleging that Joe Biden knew his son's every move, including his international business deals. Here is McCormick on Fox News.
I've left the White House. I'm writing books, and I get a hold of the Hunter Biden laptop from Marco Polo. They're a nonprofit, anti-corruption nonprofit. About a year and a half ago, I started writing a Substack based on what I find. And then I go back over what I knew happened when I was working for Joe. I found the transcript that I wrote about that briefing. That's when Jake Sullivan starts talking about fracking. And because of what I'd read in the laptop and reported in my Substack previously, I'm like, wait a minute. Joe Biden knew Hunter Biden was already on the board on April 18th. Joe Biden knew. He directed Sullivan to go back and talk to the press. This is a conspiracy. This is a crime. This is public corruption.
McCormick also said he went to the FBI with this information and nothing yet has been done.
According to Fox News Digital, Hunter Biden's former business partners and associates frequented the White House 80 times when President Obama was still in office and even met within Vice President Biden's team on multiple occasions. President Biden has consistently denied having any knowledge of his son's business ventures, but visitor logs that Fox News reviewed tell a somewhat different story.
So this is pretty interesting. There might be a there here,
yeah.
to use the appropriate wording. So this guy, Mike McCormick, was an employee within the Obama White House. And he is saying that his role was to sort of record statements that might be made by top officials, by the president, by the vice president, I think at times where the press is not on hand. And he says that he transcribed this conversation where Jake Sullivan talks about the fracking and Burisma, and this is just a few days after Hunter Biden is on the board of Burisma. And this is gonna create jobs, and it's gonna be a payment to Burisma, and then this money for the Ukraine energy sector was approved sometime after that. So this puts in a piece of the puzzle. This would establish that at least Jake Sullivan. I mean, you could try to poke holes at it. You could say maybe Joe Biden didn't know Hunter Biden it was 3 days earlier. Maybe Jake Sullivan did this without Biden's awareness. Maybe someone else instructed him. But this would establish potentially that Joe Biden, that Hunter Biden is already on the board, and now here's an action being taken that would ostensibly benefit this company. Is this directing, U.S. foreign policy money in some way? It's interesting, and
sure,
the FBI should follow up on it. So it's interesting that they have not chosen to bite as of yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some reasons why they might not, that have a little less to do with protecting Joe Biden and more to do with how pervasive this kind of nepotism and self-dealing is in government, generally speaking, and not wanting to, get the proverbial camel's nose under the tent. But the second part of this is also interesting because Biden has basically set himself up by saying, I didn't know anything about my son's business practices. I mean, that's an overly broad claim. I mean, I don't have the best sense of what some of my friends do for a living, you know what I mean? But for me to claim I have no knowledge of it. Our friends don't have
the best sense of what we do for a living because it's very confusing. What do we do for a living?
Sure, but for me to such a definitive claim, I have no idea what my son is doing in his business practices. It invites people to poke holes in it, and that's exactly what this Fox News story does. It says, okay, well, look at how 4 business partners, a vice president and 2 assistants at Hunter Biden's now defunct firm, visited the White House more than 80 times when Biden was vice president. So, I mean, sure, there's a world where you're coming for, I think one of these was a Jewish holiday event, other kinds of parties and things that happen at the White House. You're not necessarily getting into the brass tacks of people's professional life. But it does obviously increase the implausibility that Biden has as much ignorance as he's claiming. Now, if he has set the bar lower for himself and said, yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm familiar with my son's business practices, and that's precisely why I was so guarded and made sure that there was no overlap. I think that's a much more credible statement. I mean, it's almost negligent not to know enough about what your kid is doing to make sure that there are ethical guidelines in place. But I mean, he has invited, I think, exactly this kind of critique by not taking this story more seriously early on.
Yeah, I would say you can't dismiss this guy out of. I mean, this guy was a Democratic official. He was an official in a Democratic administration.
Sure.
So we have to at least, listen with some attention to what he's saying, and I think there should be some follow-up here. Now, Hunter Biden has kept a low profile amid ongoing congressional probes and a federal investigation for tax fraud and alleged international business deals. But recently, he's been seen hanging out at the White House a little bit more often, attending this year's Easter egg roll, joining the Biden family over the holiday weekend at Camp David, and also accompanying his father on a trip to Ireland this week, which, if nothing else, is a reminder that, they are close.
Of course.
They're well, I mean, some families are
that's why I
estranged.
stopped myself.
Some parents and their kids don't get along.
Yeah, I think I said, of course, was sparked by what we know.
We know Biden has genuine affection for Hunter and worries about him.
It's I mean, the context is weird, but it is sweet. I mean, they do seem genuinely close. But again, that's what begs this question of how we could possibly believe the level of distance that that Biden proclaims exists between he and his son's business, knowledge of his business dealings. Not to say that there's necessarily anything inappropriate, but he's disclaiming any kind of knowledge of it. Yeah, it really merits looking into. And while I take your point on, maybe at this level, what McCormick is alleging is a kind of, corruption that is so pervasive, it's not even rising to the level of something. But no, that's not. I wasn't saying that. I'm saying that it's so pervasive that nobody wants to look into it on either side of the aisle because it would implicate too many people. Yeah. Well, and remember, the FBI said they didn't want to look into various elements of this because it was too close to an election, and they didn't want to, they didn't want to pull the James Comey or whatever with the Clinton emails. Which, okay. When are you going to get to? It's always within some time period of an election. There's no. We're always in election mode. Honestly, there is the reality of how things work now. Yeah, it's also, I'd be remiss not to mention how divisive an issue fracking has been, specifically with Biden vis-a-vis the rest of the Democratic Party and progressives specifically. There was a moment in time when the broad liberal position was very antagonistic to fracking. We were seeing videos of people, particularly in parts of the country that Biden is from and that have been really devastated by deindustrialization, turn on their taps to see flames and other horrible things shooting out. We have been focused on the kinds of environmental harms that are happening in places like East Palestine. Fracking has yielded all kinds of toxic effects in communities across this country. Rust Belt, hard hat kind of traditional Democratic Party union-based communities, and then for Joe Biden to basically have this radical shift in the middle of the primary campaign and say, yes, fracking, more fracking, we're going to do the fracking, after proclaiming no more fracking earlier on. Really radicalized and irritated a number of progressives. And if there were some context that motivated why he would want to take that kind of a political hit within his own party, this would offer, something like this happening behind the scenes would offer some motive to make a move that was so negatively received within your own political ranks. Was it negatively received on the Democratic side? Yeah. I mean, there's more Democrats oppose fracking than support it. Is that the case? So what actually happened was the polling shifted along with Joe Biden's opinion. So when Democrats were largely aligned with saying that fracking was bad, most Democrats thought that fracking was bad, and there was, I believe, if I recall correctly, a 20-point swing that happened over the course of 2020 because of Joe Biden's shift on this issue. So polls tell you something, but not a whole lot. People are very influenceable. I said this yesterday in my radar about Edward Bernays and how, that's the power of lobbying and political messaging and getting high-profile figures on your side to take certain positions, because the public largely just puts their trust in people and then thinks that the people are going to have their back. And people like Joe Biden. He seems like a good guy. He loves his kids. He eats ice cream. He loves his dog, etc. And so people are willing to follow his lead, which can sometimes be a good thing, but it can sometimes be a very dangerous thing. All right. Well, we'll have more Rising right after this.